Good morning, class. Today we are going to study about relation between color and its constitution. Um, about constitution is what kind of structure, chemical structure is there. Moving on to first of all, light is a electromagnetic radiation. When we talk about light, it has two components. One is electrical and one is magnetic, and these two components are perpendicular to each other this way. So one wave is oscillating in xz plane, other one is oscillating into yz plane. That way two perpendicular electrical and magnetic component are there in the light radiation. And light radiation vibrates in form of packets called quanta. Now these vibrations can occur in all planes, or it could be a plane polarized light. If we cut a slice kind of plane, if the oscillations are occurring in all the directions, I have drawn few lines, but like in each and every possible plane, if the light is oscillating, then we call the vibration are occurring in all the planes. And for plane polarized light, we represent it like this, only in one single plane. We can measure amplitude of the wave, or intensity of the light, or its frequency, or wavelength, or wave number, or velocity, its color and tone. All those things can be measured for a particular light or particular wavelength of the light. Now how the color and structures are related. There are two kind of groups. One is called chromophore, one is called auxochrome. We'll see how their presence affect the color of the compound. The carbonyl and ethylene groups have chromophoric properties. Now this chromophoric word, it is something that imparts color. Chromo is a word used for color. So carbonyl group and ethylene or vinyl group have chromophoric property. That means if these groups are present in any molecule, they will impart color to that particular molecule. Carbonyl and ethylene group have chromophoric properties only when they are present in the molecule in multiple and conjugated system. So if a compound have single carbonyl group or even have multiple groups present, but there is no conjugation between them, then there will be no color. But if these groups are present in conjugation, here we have a conjugation present here, so the color will be shown by the compound. For example, you have acetone. So this is the structure of acetone. All of us know that acetone is colorless. So acetone only have a carbonyl group which is not present in conjugation with any other double bond, while diacetyl is yellow. if I have the structure. No, I don't have the structure of diacetyl. So diacetyl is some kind of substitution is here. Okay, so diacetyl is this. So these two carbonyl groups are in conjugation. So this is yellow colored. As is benzyl, which is deeper yellow. If this kind of conjugation is present, now it's a benzene. So the conjugation is much more than the diacetyl. So the color here is deeper yellow. Similarly, triketopentane is yellow orange. So you have all the three groups are keto. So obviously the terminal carbon doesn't have carbonyl group. So only the three conjugate carbons have ketonic group. So this is much deeper in color, yellow orange. This is yellow orange in color. So as the conjugation increases, the chromophoric property of the compounds increases. Since it is the delocalization of pi electron that is related to the production of color, it is evident from these examples that such delocalization accompanies multiple conjugated unsaturation. Now, if you remember the colors shown by complex metal complexes, due to delocalization of electrons. So there was delocalization of electrons that was responsible for the color of some of the d block elements. Here also the color is due to the delocalization of electrons, but here it is pi electrons which are responsible for the production of color. Now chromophore we have discussed. Who gave this theory of chromophore and oxochrome? That was O.N. Witt. He observed in 1876 that all the colored compound, they contain certain unsaturated groups, and he called those unsaturated groups as chromophores, and compounds which contain those unsaturated groups were called as chromogen. And he also gave the theory of he also gave a term oxochrome. When certain group called oxochrome are present in the chromogen, a dye is obtained. That means when chromophoric group and oxochrome groups were present simultaneously, that time the chromogen imparted a color. That's why the word dye is written here. So this way a theory of oxochrome chromophore theory of color was put forward in 1876 by O.N. Witt. He said the chromogens are those compounds which contain some unsaturated groups called chromophores, and along with the chromophoric group, if oxochrome groups were present, then the compound showed the properties of a dye. Now, which groups he called as chromophores? Ketonic group, nitroso group, quinoid group, ethylenic group, nitro group, azo group. All those unsaturated functional groups he called as chromophores. Now moving on to oxochromes. Oxochrome may be either acidic or basic, OH or NH2. So OH and NH2 or acidic groups like carboxylic acid, sulfuric acid, amine, all those have tendency for conjugation. So when these groups are present along with the chromophoric group, the conjugation increased, hence resulting in a good color shown by the compound. So what it says, oxochrome may be either acidic or basic, like alcoholic group, amine or amine group. Other oxochrome could include carboxylic acid, sulfuric acid, substituted amines. These groups from salt with either acidic or alkalis. These groups could be present in the form of acid or base or their salts. They also form hydrogen bonds with certain groups like OH of cellulose or NH2 of wool and silk. They form um, hydrogen bonding. Now moving on to the example. If we talk about azobenzene, this azo group is our chromophore. When it is present in conjugation with the benzene ring, conjugation has been increased, but it cannot be used as a dye. We cannot use it as a dye. So azobenzene as such does not impart a good color. It itself is colored, but it cannot be used as a dye for coloring other substances. But when an amine group is present in this, if this becomes para amino azobenzene, then NH2 act as a oxochrome. This is oxochrome, and this oxochrome binds with the substance which we want to dye. Let's say we want to dye a cotton or a wool or a silk. Depending upon what we want to dye and which kind of group we have here, this could be used as a dye. This NH2 group will bond with the substance we want to color, and it can be used as a dye. So it's a dispersed dye that can be easily used. Now classification of dyes based on the chemical nature, or you can say chemical structure. The very first is indigoid dye. So indigoid dye is a group of natural dyes, and these are extracted from a bush, pea bush, known as Indigofera tinctoria. So these generally impart blue color, and this dye has been used prehistorically in India, and people believe that it was originated in India. So the name is derived from the word indican. And if we talk about the structure, this is the parent structure which is present in the indigoid dyes. These could have slight modification. For example, some substitution could be here to give us all the different members of the indigoid dye. Next is anthraquinone. So this is the structure of anthraquinone. This is the parent structure, and if other substitution are present in it, a broad class of anthraquinone dyes can be obtained. Now these impart red dyes. These give us red dyes which are based on anthraquinone structure. They are obtained both from plants and insects. These dyes are characterized by good fastening to light. They can sustain light. They do not decompose on exposure to the light. So that's a good property. That is a desirable property from a colorant or a dye. They form complexes with metal salts and resultant metal complex dyes have good wash fastening. That means they form salts with the metals and form metal complex dyes, and the color doesn't bleach out on washing, so they are good for dyeing the clothes also. Alpha naphthoquinone. This hydroxy group is present on the alpha position, so that's why the name is alpha. Alpha naphthoquinone. This is the structure. This is the principal structure. The most prominent member of this class of dye is lawson. So if somebody asks you an example of alpha naphthoquinone, that will be lawson, and it is obtained from Lawsonia inerimis. Next is flavones. So this is the structure of flavone. You will be studying more about this in your upcoming semesters, where you will be studying natural product chemistry. So flavone is a colorless organic compound. This is in itself is colorless, and most of the natural color flavones are generally yellow color. So the yellow color that is present in the flavones or isoflavones is because of the substituents like hydroxy group or methoxy group present on these. It could have substitution on the benzene ring also, or here also, or this ketonic group could be a hydroxy or methoxy group. A lot of variation in the structure is possible, and on varying the structure, colors are obtained in case of flavones. So all those are responsible because of the hydroxy or methoxy substituents present on the flavones. It is obtained from flowers or seeds of the Primula species, in buds of various variety of dahlias, Reseda luteolia, and Diasbrum, that is Genista tinctoria. So flavones are obtained from natural sources, so mostly plants and seeds. Flowers and seeds have flavors. Now comes the theories. What is the relation between color and its constituents? So this we have already discussed some of these things. So the first theory, that was chromophore auxochrome theory or Witt's theory, proposed by Witt in 1875. We have slightly discussed it. But what it says that the some substances which are colored is due to the presence of some unsaturated groups, also known as chromophores, and some of the chromophoric groups are alkene, C double bond N, C double bond O, N double bond N, NO2, quinoid. Quinoid have a structure like this. This is quinoid structure. So he said the compounds which are colored have a unsaturated group present in them, and few of those examples are these. But what he suggested that alone a single chromophore is sufficient to impart color, but that is not always the case. Sometimes more than one chromophore is required for imparting the color. Like single chromophore, if present in a compound, is not a guarantee that particular compound will be colored. Sometimes it is sufficient, sometimes a single chromophore impart color to the compound, but that's not 100% true. Sometimes more than one chromophore is required. Now the compounds which has chromophores He named them as chromogens. And chromophoric group are of following two types. He divided the various chromophoric groups into two categories. One which he said that alone they can impart color to the compound. Examples: NO, nitroso, nitro, azo, azide group, and similar other groups, paraquinoid and all those groups. He said these, if present alone, can impart color to the compound. Another category he named those chromophores which if present alone cannot impart color to the compound, and those could be alkene or carboxylic group. And for that, we have already seen the example of acetone and diacetyl. Acetone is colorless and our diacetyl is yellow. So when two of the ketonic group were present in conjugation, they were colored. When alone it was present, it could not impart color to the compound and it was colorless. Now what he said, the presence of chromophore is responsible for the color of compound, but that colored compound whether can be used as a colorant or you can say whether can be used as a dye is based on the fact that that compound could attach to the substance we want to color. For example, a compound could be colored, but it cannot impart that color to the fabric or to any other substance we want to color. So for that he said another kind of groups should be present there in the compound so that it can bound to our fabric or paper or whatever, leather, whatever we want to impart color to. So that way he put forward this auxochrome chromophore theory of color. So basically substances which can be used as dyes should have both the groups, chromophoric group and the auxochrome group present in them. So the role of chromophore is to impart color to the compound, and the role of auxochrome is binding of the substance to the fabric or leather or a paper or whatever substance we want to impart that particular color to. So what are auxochrome? How does this auxochrome chromophore theory works? Since the auxochromes are capable of forming salts either with basic or acidic groups, their presence also convert a colored compound into a dye which must fix permanently to the fabric. Fixing permanently means it should not be washed by water or decolorized by light or soap or any other laundering substance. It should be permanently fixed to the fiber. And this permanently fixing is only possible when a chemical bond formation takes place between the fabric and the auxochrome. We'll see some examples. So here are some structures. If we talk about benzene have a carbon-carbon double bond present in conjugation. So these are, so in benzene we have 3 alkene groups present in conjugation, but it is not capable of imparting color to any substance. Then we have diazobenzene. Diazobenzene have benzene ring azo group, in conjugation. So this azo group alone is capable of imparting color to the compound. So diazobenzene is colored, but this cannot be used as a dye. So a requirement of a chromophore, uh, the presence of a chromophore alone is not a desired property for a dye or a colorant. This could impart color to the compound, but that compound cannot be used as a colorant or a dye. Now if we see this, so here we have a oxochromic group present, NH2 positive, Cl negative. So this NH2 group, this is capable of binding with any fiber or any other substance we want to impart color to. And this NH2, here it is shown in the form of salt. So how it forms a bond, that has been shown. So if any substance which have any group like chlorine present on its surface, this dye can go and bind with it to form a ionic bond, and it could impart color to that particular fabric or text, your paper or a leather or any other substance that require color. After this theory, in 1885, Armstrong proposed a quinoid theory. So we already know the quinoid structure. He said that all the coloring matter can be represented in the form of quinoid structure, ortho or para quinoid structure. So he believed that a particular compound can be formulated in the form of quinoid, and only if the compound can be formulated in quinoid form, it will be colored, otherwise it will be colorless. Some of the properties of the coloring substance could be explained based on the quinoid theory, but this theory was not universal. It couldn't be applied to all the substance. For some substances it was true. For example, it says benzene is colorless, whereas benzoquinone is colored. So this benzene is colorless, but this substance is colored. So he proposed the quinoid theory, that if we can write the formula of the compound in the form of quinoid, then only the compound is colored, otherwise not. But this theory was not sufficient, because there were exceptions to these. There were substances which had quinoid structure, but they were colorless. For example, iminoquinone. Iminoquinone have a structure like this. It is colorless compound, and diiminoquinone is, this also has quinoid structure, but even this is also colorless. Both of these are colorless. So he could not explain all the substances based on this theory. So this theory was insufficient for explaining the color of the compound. After this came the modern theories. These theories we study in D block elements or in our coordination compounds also. The valence bond theory and MOT, molecular orbital theory. So these two theories are based on the effect of light on the molecule itself. How the light affect the molecule and shows the color. So moving on to valence bond theory, there are some postulates of VBT. First is chromophores are group of atoms, the pi electron of which may get transferred from ground state to the excited state by absorption of radiation, thus producing the color. This means that the pi electrons, because pi electrons are slightly loosely bound as compared to the sigma electrons, so when the light falls on them, they absorbs the light photons and get excited and moves on to the higher energy state, or we can say the excited state, and that results in the imparting of color to the compound. Auxochromes are group which tend to increase resonance by interacting the unshared pair of electron on nitrogen or oxygen atom of the auxochrome with the pi electrons of the aromatic ring. This increase in resonance increases the intensity of absorption of light and also shift the absorption band to the longer wavelength. So if we look at the any structure, what is happening here? Here we have resonance. The presence of chromophore increases the resonance, and the shift of the pi electron is to a higher excited level. Chromophore further increases this conjugation, hence imparts a deeper color. So that was proposed by valence bond theory. It says this increases the intensity of light absorbed and also shift the absorption band to a longer wavelength, which results in the deepening of color. And when this theory was tested, these postulates were found true, that this is the case. And when the effect of light on different unsaturated groups were studied, it was found that the changes are maximum in case of N double bond O, after that C double bond S, azo group, carbonyl group, nitrile group, and alkene is the least. So this kind of series was obtained. Resonance theory explains the relation of the color and the symmetry of molecule or transition dipole of the molecule, because the number of charged canonical structures increases. Now what happens when there are higher number of resonating structures? It is proposed that since the canonical structures increases, the compound shows deeper color. More the resonating structures possible, more deeper will be the color of the compound. The more the possibility and the longer the path for a charge to oscillate in the compound, the longer the wavelength of light will be observed. What other thing they said? If the conjugation is longer, then the light that is absorbed by the compound, or the wavelength that is absorbed, becomes longer, and hence a deeper color is obtained. So when earlier we discussed the example of benzene, diazobenzene, and our this ammonium salt of diazobenzene. So in these three cases, what is happening? There was resonance further increased, and due to auxochrome, this was much more increased than the diazobenzene, hence the color gets deeper. So this is what valence bond theory put forward. After that came molecular orbital theory. According to this theory, what they proposed, There are various energy levels present in a molecule. Um, Bonding orbital, non-bonding orbital, anti-bonding orbital. And what happens when light falls on the molecule? The electron from the lower energy level shifts to a higher energy level, and that results in the and when that excited electrons comes back from the excited state to the ground state, that energy is released again in the form of a light wavelength, and that results in the color of the compound. So that was the basis of the MOT theory. Now the electron which shifts from the lower energy level could belong to the sigma, pi, or non-bonding energy level. I'll show you the energy diagram. And the higher energy level could be your sigma star or pi star, that is anti-bonding orbitals. So this is the energy level diagram of a molecular orbital. Sigma bonding orbital is least in energy, then pi bonding, then non-bonding, then pi star anti-bonding, then sigma star anti-bonding. Now electrons can get excited from any of the lower energy level to the higher energy level, but all of them are not allowed. For example, if we want to shift electron from sigma energy level, sigma bonds we know that are very strong bonds, so it's not easier to excite a sigma electron to a higher energy level. In some cases it is possible, but then the energy shift from sigma to sigma stars, that kind of transition doesn't come into the visible range, so the color will not be obtained. So the transition which are responsible for the color are transition like pi to pi star, n to pi star, or n to sigma star. Three transitions are responsible for the imparting of color to the substances, that is um, pi to pi star, n to pi star, or n to sigma star. These transitions are mainly responsible for the color of the compound. So the electronic transition that can occur by absorption of ultraviolet and visible radiation are n to sigma star, n to pi star, and pi to pi star. These three transitions are responsible for the color of the compound. Sigma to sigma star transition takes place when a bonding sigma electron is excited to the anti-bonding sigma electron. But this kind of transition, so the transition that they are talking about is from sigma to sigma star. This transition requires a huge amount of energy, and that much amount of energy, because the sigma electrons are tightly bonded, that much amount of energy cannot come from a ultraviolet visible radiation. UV vis radiation cannot provide that much energy, so a high amount of energy is required to be provided, which doesn't come into the visible range, and we cannot see the color of those. They have given us an example of hydrocarbon. The compound like saturated hydrocarbon, where there is no double or triple bond, they cannot have pi. They do not have any pi or sigma electron which can undergo these kind of transition, so only sigma to sigma transition is possible, and that requires an energy of 135 millimicron. So that much amount is not giving us any color to the compound. That's why the ethane or any other hydrocarbon is colorless. So these were the few theories of color proposed by different scientists.